Questions 27 through 30. Listen to a teacher talking in a physiology class.
Let's turn our attention to the human ear. The ear has two primary functions, hearing and balance. There are two ears. One is on each side of the head. The ear has three main parts. Take a look at the picture on page 58 in your textbooks. See it? The three main parts are the outer ear, the middle ear, and the inner ear. The ear is also, as you can see, made up of skin, membranes, bones, nerves, and blood vessels. The part of the ear that is visible is called the pinna. Notice that it has two N's in the spelling. The pinna is a part of the outer ear. It helps collect sound waves as they move through the ear. This tube here is called the external auditory canal. It leads from the pinna to the tympanic membrane. Most people know it as the eardrum. Anyway, sound waves hit the tympanic membrane. This causes vibrations that are transferred to the middle ear. Take a look at the middle ear. There are three small bones here, here, and here. These bones help transfer the sound waves from the outer ear to the inner ear. That's pretty much the role of the middle ear. Simple, huh? As for the inner ear, there are three main parts, the cochlea, the vestibule, and three semicircular canals. The cochlea collects the sound waves that come from the middle ear. It's spiral-shaped, as you can see from the picture. Inside the cochlea are fluids that transfer sound waves to a nerve. This nerve is connected to the brain. The brain then interprets the sounds. The other two parts, the vestibule and the three semicircular canals, are used for balance. They're filled with fluids and help us maintain a sense of balance whenever we move.
Now answer the questions. Number 27. What is the teacher mainly discussing? Number 28. Why does the teacher mention the students' textbooks? Number 29. What is the pinna? Number 30. According to the teacher, which part of the ear helps people with their balance? Questions 31 through 34. Listen to a teacher talking in a biology class.
Marsupials are among the oddest of all the families of animals. They're mammals, such as opossums, kangaroos, wombats, koalas, and wallabies. As you might have guessed from the list I just gave you, the vast majority of marsupials live in Australia. Many others are found in South America. As for here in North America, well, the only marsupial native to this continent is the opossum.
How are marsupials different from other mammals? What makes them special?
The primary difference concerns how they give birth. Almost every female mammal has a placenta in her womb. The baby, or babies, develops and grows in the womb and gets nourishment from the placenta. A marsupial, however, doesn't have a placenta. Instead, a marsupial's womb is more like, an egg. A baby marsupial only lives in its mother's womb for a short time. In the womb is a substance that's sort of like an egg yolk. Well, once the baby is born, it crawls into its mother's pouch. That's another characteristic of marsupials. Every female marsupial has a pouch in the front of her body. This pocket-like area is where her nipples are. So, the baby crawls into the pouch, latches onto a nipple, and starts feeding on its mother's milk. Depending on the species, the baby will stay in the pouch for weeks or months until it's mature enough to survive on its own. Nowadays, as I mentioned, marsupials primarily live in Australia and South America. DNA testing has shown that they actually originated in South America. However, marsupial fossils have been found on every continent. Thus, they were once much more widespread. So here's a question. What happened that caused them to die out on the other continents? And here's another question. Why do they thrive in Australia? As for the answers to those two questions, no one is really sure, but many experts believe it has to do with how marsupials give birth. Marsupial females are only pregnant for a short time, and pregnant females are vulnerable in many ways. So, in the harsh, hot climate of Australia, it's possible that marsupial females were able to survive more easily than other female mammals.
Now answer the questions. Number 31. According to the teacher, where do most marsupials presently live? Number 32. Why does the teacher mention the opossum? Number 33. What does a marsupial female lack? Number 34. What does the teacher imply about marsupials? Questions 35 through 38. Listen to a teacher talking in a social studies class. In my opinion, the most beautiful part of the country is the Southwest. I'm referring specifically to the land in the states of Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, and Colorado. If you ever get a chance to go there, you should. One reason that the region is so amazing is that there are a large number of different land features there. You all know about the Grand Canyon in Arizona. Canyons are quite impressive. But before we discuss them, I want to cover 3 other land features. They are buttes, mesas, and plateaus. Kathy, your hand is up. Do you have a question?
Yes, Mr. Wilkinson, I do. I thought that buttes, mesas, and plateaus are pretty much the same. They are, aren't they? All 3 of them are just raised areas of land.
Well, you're correct to some extent, Kathy. All 3 of them are similar, but they also have some distinct differences. Why don't I tell you about them right now? Basically, class, Kathy is right about one thing. Buttes, mesas, and plateaus are all land formations that are higher in elevation than their surrounding areas. They also have steep sides. Oh, and they all have relatively flat tops. Nevertheless, despite these similarities, they have differences as well. Let's start with buttes. Buttes are the smallest of the 3 features. They are also, in my opinion, the most spectacular. A butte is basically the remains of a mesa after most of the mesa has been eroded away. Buttes have extremely steep sides that can rise hundreds of feet above the ground. They usually have flat tops, but they can have pointed tops at times. That's due to the effects of erosion. As for mesas, they are larger than buttes and are not as steep or high as them. Furthermore, there's one major difference between mesas and buttes. Mesas have standing water on their tops. This is typically in the form of a lake or pond. Buttes, on the other hand, lack water. If you ask some people in the West, they will say that if you can graze cattle on the land, it's a mesa. If you can't do that, it's a butte. Now answer the questions. Number 35. What is the main topic of the talk? Number 36. What is probably true about the teacher? Number 37. According to the teacher, what is a characteristic of a butte? Number 38. What will the teacher probably do next? Questions 39 through 42. Listen to a teacher talking in a history class. Okay, so Napoleon's armies were still successful on the battlefield. However, the Allied coalition captured Paris in March 1814. At that time, Napoleon's generals gave up. They basically told him that they and their armies would not follow him anymore. So on April 11, 1814, Napoleon abdicated at Fontainebleau, France. When I say that he abdicated, I mean that he gave up his throne and all the power that went with it. The Allied forces decided to send Napoleon into exile. They chose to send him to the island of Elba, which is in the Mediterranean Sea. Napoleon went to Elba and remained there for 10 months. His wife and son didn't accompany him there. And while he was on the island, he heard rumors that there were plans to exile him to a place far from Europe. Given Napoleon's personality, there was no way that he was going to sit around and do nothing. On February 26, 1815, he escaped from Elba. This began the period in history known as the 100 Days. Napoleon returned to France, won some soldiers to his side, and marched on Paris. As he did so, more soldiers and citizens joined him. Soon the Allied forces realized that Napoleon had returned and was going to cause more trouble. They returned to the field of battle. While many Frenchmen had high hopes for Napoleon, he did not manage to remain in power. In June, Napoleon was defeated by the Duke of Wellington at the Battle of Waterloo. Once again, he was sent into exile. This time, he wasn't allowed to remain anywhere near Europe. He was instead sent to the island of St. Helena.
Where's that? I've never even heard of it.
Take a look at the map. It's way down here in the South Atlantic Ocean. It's pretty much in the middle of nowhere. Napoleon was also treated more like a prisoner rather than an emperor. He was kept in a house and permitted few freedoms. A few people from France joined him in exile, but he was constantly guarded by both British soldiers and the British Navy to prevent him from escaping. Now answer the questions. Number 39. What is the teacher mainly talking about? Number 40. Where was Napoleon sent into exile the first time? Number 41. When did the 100 Days begin? Number 42. Why does the teacher mention a map? Stop. This is the end of the listening section.